Good morning. Welcome everybody. This is the third in this series I'm doing on the poetry of practice, and something I'd like to say about some of the power of poetry, and maybe part of the reason why some of us, not everybody, appreciates it. I certainly did not appreciate poetry earlier in my life. I thought it was frivolous and I didn't understand it, but now I have this much greater appreciation. But part of the power, excuse me here. I had to mute myself while I was coughing. So I wanted to say that part of the power of poetry, like some of the impact or its beauty, I might even say, is that it lets us see things in a different way. See things in a different way, or maybe even just see different things that we might ordinarily like just ignore or not notice. But poetry kind of like often like points us to this way and to see things from maybe like a different perspective. And sometimes this is a surprising perspective, maybe a little bit different one. And maybe there's often this very subtle sense of delight, like, oh, like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, or oh, isn't that interesting? And there's this way that this subtle sense of delight is not so different from that subtle sense of delight that we get when we finally kind of like align ourselves with reality and they're mindful and present for what's actually happening in that moment. Even if what's being experienced is not pleasant, if it's uncomfortable, but there's this subtle sense of like, yeah, okay, it's like this. Instead of, trying to convince ourselves differently or gaslight ourselves in some kind of way. So this subtle sense of delight that poetry allows, and I would say that mindfulness, like being present for whatever is happening, whether it's ordinary, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, just to be present for what's happening. So with that as a short little introduction, let's do some meditation. Those of you who have been here earlier in the week know that I'll guide us a little bit in some meditation, and then I'll drop in a poem. And then I'll talk a little bit about the poem after the meditation. Is there a way that we can bring a sense of collectedness, like bringing in all the different aspects of our experience to be here? Sometimes the mind is in one place while the body is in a different place. Can we combine them and be here? Maybe there's a way it makes sense to have the imagery of dropping into the body. Like maybe there's the mind joins the body and drops in or something like that, such that we inhabit this bodily experience. So that we're present for whatever there is to be present for, right now, right here. Feeling connected and supported with our sitting surface. We shouldn't underestimate how helpful and supportive it can be to feel grounded, connected. You're sitting to allow the posture to rise out of the groundedness, the foundation, the connectedness. Resting the attention on the experience of breathing, not the idea, but the experience, the felt sense, feeling, for example, the stretch with the inhale and the release of the stretch with the exhale. The body is experienced this morning, today, right now, this moment. Can you be okay just for this session? Can you be okay with however the body is at this moment? The mind wanders. Doesn't have to be a problem. It's what minds do. Just very simply, gently begin again with the sensations of breathing. So I'd like to offer a poem. You don't have to do anything with this poem. It's just an offering. Allow it to be experienced. You don't have to figure it out or understand it or go look it up or anything like this. And just allow it to join you in your meditation. This poem is called Mindful by Mary Oliver. Mindful by Mary Oliver. And it goes like this. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. Read this poem again. Mindful by Mary Oliver. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. you for meditating together. It's lovely to meditate together. So, continuing on this theme of poetry as practice, I'm going to say a little bit more about poetry. There's this way that in poetry you find like this compactness of expression, like where things get said, like a lot gets said in a few words. And maybe there's a certain amount of directness, but maybe not in the directness that we often think about in prose. There's like it's pointing with some cleanness or clarity of where it's pointing, but that's the manner of pointing is not direct. Direct would maybe to say something or label something specifically. But this clarity, I would say maybe, is similar to this a non-distracted mind. Like when we're meditating, there's a certain clarity of the mind. And so in the same way, poetry has this clarity in the way that it points to things. And maybe, the way that poetry points is through we might say, the magic of metaphor or use of other senses, the way things smell or how they look, or maybe there's a way in which they highlight different ways of experience things, but it's pointing towards experience so often, at least the poems that I'm bringing forth for this. And there's maybe one more thing I want to say about poetry here is that it can shine a light in some kind of way towards something that maybe otherwise we just wouldn't see, or the light helps us to see things differently with a different perspective. And this is part of what I'm calling the poetry of practice. It's like how poetry and practice have this relationship. They're not only using poetry as a support for practice, but in ways in which the experiences in some kind of way share some elements. So this morning and during the guided meditation, I introduced this poem called Mindful by Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver, many of you know, is an American poet. She won the Pulitzer Prize back in the mid-'80s. And then this poem she got published in 2005 when she was 70 years old. I just love this, right? She was in the later season of her life, and she was still writing poetry, still offering things of beauty to the world. This is meaningful for me, that it's not like we just have only one season of our life in which we're offering things that's of value. But here's Mary Oliver when she's 70 years old, offering things. So here's this poem. It's called Mindful by Mary Oliver. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. I don't know, this poem just makes me happy. And each time I read it, of course I read it a few times before I offered it for you guys, but while I was reading it during the guided meditation, I had some new ideas about it. And just now I had some new ideas about it. And for me, this is something I love about poetry, that there's this depth to it. It's not like it's just one dimensional, one way to interpret it or understand it. those of you may know, I've also taught a lot of sutta study through the years, both in the academic setting and in the Dharma setting. And this is also something I love about the suttas. There's such a depth and a breadth of meaning. It's not like the first time we understand it is the first time, like, okay, I got it. Next. It's not like that with poetry or with suttas. So I'll offer some things here about this poem, but maybe you found something different that was helpful and meaningful for you. And again, the encouragement here is to take what's useful and just leave behind what isn't. So here are some of Diana's thoughts about this. I appreciate that she's pointing to maybe we might use this word uplift of the heart and mind. She's saying this kills me with delight. Instruct myself over and over in joy. So she's using these, obvious words. Kills me with delight, instruct myself over and over in joy. But she's also using some of this less direct language. This is what I was born for. Right? There's an uplift of the heart when we feel like, oh, this is what I was born for. So she's pointing to brightness, obviously joy and delight, but maybe I'll use this word brightness. But I love that she's not assigning this to some peak experience. She's not saying, okay, there's delight because I got what I wanted. It's not delight because I am feeling love in some particular way with a person I finally had the perfect relationship or the perfect job or perfect anything. She's pointing to the ordinary. And in some ways, we could say the very first line of this poem, you guys can't see the page breaks unless you're looking at it, or I'm sorry, the line breaks. But this poem starts with every day. This is the ordinary stuff that happens every day. And then there's this expression in the poem, nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant. So when I was reading that just now for you guys, it occurred to me like, oh, this kind of sounds like the news, something else that is every day. But the exceptional, fearful, dreadful, and extravagant, this is what makes it into the news these days, right? This, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's going to provoke us and poke us in some kind of way, that's what gets in the news. And that's not what Mary Oliver is pointing to here. Instead, she even says, right, in the poem, she says explicitly, the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. The ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. I think she's encouraging us not to wait for something that's extraordinary, not to wait until something, noteworthy, quote unquote, shows up. And before we start to feel some delight, to start to feel some of this uplift. And I appreciate that she's not denying that there's drab, fearful, dreadful, extravagant in terms of like, whoa, that's too much, that's too extreme. She's not denying that exists. She's not pretending that it doesn't exist, but she's encouraging us. Can we just look towards the ordinary, the daily things? And also there's something about this ordinary, the last line of this poem are prayers that are made of grass. I scratched my head a little bit, like prayers that are made of grass. What is this? But maybe there's this way we can think of like grass is one of the most common and maybe unremarkable things, right, that is on this planet. Like there's grass everywhere, different types of grasses and so many different types of ecosystems. And there's so many different ways in which grass shows up, like even like between the cracks in the sidewalk type of thing. Like we just think the grass is just everywhere. So that prayers that are made of grass, so bringing something, maybe this connection with the divine, or maybe prayers can represent something that's heartfelt and meaningful, or maybe there's something about devotion that says ordinary and maybe everywhere is grass. Maybe we can consider maybe even grass as something, a connection to something bigger than ourselves. And then here's something that I want to point to that really I think is so important also in this poem, and that is oblique in the pointings to it. And now how she's pointing to, with this delight and this uplift and connection with the ordinary, no longer being the exact center of everything. There's a lack of self-centeredness in this poem. There's a lack of, I finally got what I wanted. There's a lack of, I finally made the world work the way it should. There's a lack of, um, I don't know. We'll have to, I'm sure we could fill in the blank with so many different ways. But here are some of the oblique ways, in my view, in which she's pointing to this. She writes, every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight. So kills me. There's a sense of the me goes away and it's just delight. It's not that, oh, I'm finally happy. I'm finally feeling something good. It kills me with delight. And then the next line is, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack. A needle in the haystack, right? It's one thing that's just like the other. So no longer having to be the center of attention, but happily being in the, with the other things, indistinguishable. And then she also has this line, it was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself. Lose myself, right? Often when we are at the center of attention, or the center, I should say, that expression isn't quite right. When we are feel like we're at the center and everything is all about me, then it's about me, because there's something not quite right. We're trying to fix something, or we're trying to get something. But part of this delight is being part of the universe, not being the center of the universe. And for some of us, that might feel like, well, no. I need to be the center of the universe. I need to, because I have all these needs that are not being met. And there's a way that I think Mary Oliver here, she's pointing to so much of the uplift of the heart can happen if there's a way, if we can soften, if we can let go, if we can not cling so tightly, but allow our experience to be part of the universe. Maybe in the same way that she's talking about this untrimmable light of the world and the oceans shine. These, I would say, are like pointing to radiance, things that are like moving out and being shared with indiscriminately with everybody, everything. Things that are boundless, they're untrimmable, they're shine. They're just going out and don't have an end. I mean, this is part of the way that we can show up in the world. We can find the delight, we can experience the delight and share the delight and joy of this boundless radiance that she's pointing to. So I'll read this poem one last time. Mindful. by Mary Oliver. Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. Oh, good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teachings as these? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass. My wish for you is may you find joy and delight and the untrimmable light of the world, and maybe even the ocean's shine. Thank you.